So, as a men's rights advocate, I speak to men every day about various issues that they feel that they don't have support with. So, I've recently been dealing with a lot of men who have had false domestic violence allegations, and this ranges from years ago to current men who are still dealing with these issues in some capacity, whether it be through police issues still, court systems, paternity, child, getting their kids back in their custody, getting visitation rights or whatever, and also just with their work, with their work environment, with the communities, with families, and also just dealing with the mental health issues from this as well. Most of the men that have found me have come through the Men's Project like Facebook page, and then I also have an Instagram page as well that a lot of men have reached out to me through there, and just through my friends list on Facebook, a lot of men have reached out to me. Plus, I also have a private men's group on Facebook as well called The Awakened Man, and a lot of men have reached out to me through there. And it's been my personal journey has been very public. I've not the last 2 years of my separation from my ex-husband, I've been very open about what I have experienced in the past, and it's helped others to make them feel a lot more comfortable coming to me and saying, this is what I've struggled with, this is what my issue is, and they just have been able to I guess come to me openly, and then they are bringing their friends and they're saying, hey, you know what, this is a woman who is advocating for us, and she's somebody you can talk to. So as far as support government wise, I am also a advocate for an Indigenous group, so I have definitely been using that voice to get the support for the men's and boys as well. Recently I was in Ottawa doing a summit for murdered and missing Indigenous women, and it was also brought up at that time that men and boys need to be addressed as well. In fact, I spoke to the CEO of the company that I work with, and that's CAP, Congress of Aboriginal People. And so I did make sure that he was aware of the fact that I am advocating for men and boys, and he was on board and said that we do need to make this change. So my voice is being out there, and I'm basically advocating, like I say, for all the men and boys. And so I'd like to think that that I'm able to kind of take this to a different level as well, and I do have that support, which is really great. Most of the men that have been in contact with me have been in contact with me through Facebook, just because of location. Like, I'm in a small town, Saskatchewan. It's not, feasible for a lot of men to come out and see me, but I do take phone calls. We do through video chat. We do through text messaging. And then I also, because I'm also a medium, I do clairvoyant work as well. So I do readings for people. So occasionally if somebody wants to come in to do that, then they would come into my home and we would have a meeting that way. But for the most part, it's, online. I haven't done group meetings yet, but that's something I'm actually working on in the future, is to actually gather, to find a safe space and to start a men's support group, and to be able to, I just feel like it's been so done. I think that men are they're just starting to feel comfortable coming out, just with me. So then to all of a sudden say, hey, let's go into a group setting. I think that it's still something that they need to build that trust with me, because I want them to make sure that they feel comfortable opening up. And so I think what we're doing right now even just in a private group setting on Facebook, that is working well. And so eventually that is what I will do, is an actual physical group setting. So I've spoken to men in the States, all over Canada, different provinces, and I travel quite a bit for my work with the advocacy work for the Indigenous. So I do meet a lot of people throughout all over Canada with this. And yeah, so Canada and the States, I have a couple of people like across seas that I've spoken to in India, and some in the UK as well. I guess the most common thing that I've seen with men when they are first addressed, or first being made aware of false domestic violence accusations, is that they're totally blindsided. because at some point that they feel like they have, they're aware that the marriage is maybe, or the relationship has its ups and downs, but for the most part it feels like they've gotten to a point where it's like, okay, we're going to work things out, and then they feel like they just get the rug pulled out from under them. And that's, for the most part, it's either it's so much manipulation. It's almost like they get sort of, it's like a 1-2 punch, right? It's like I'm going to give you all these things, and now all of a sudden I'm going to be very cooperative, and we're going to work this out. And then all of a sudden they, get a surprise visit from the police, and then they have their children are taken away with zero notice, and then now they're having to fight for the inherent right of their own, to see their own children. And so this is causing a massive emotional and mental shock. Yes, thank you. When typically the men that I've spoken to date, the initial reaction when they first get served is obviously shock, but men and boys are not taught where to go for support. Women always have support. You grow up knowing that when you're, as a woman, if you need something, this is who you go to. Men and boys, they haven't had that upbringing, and that it's not commonplace for them to say, if this happens to you, this is where you go. So a lot of them just feel like law enforcement is your go-to person. But if it's law enforcement coming to you, who is now all of a sudden making you out to be the bad guy, and making you, being told that you've done something you haven't done. Now all of a sudden the person that you feel like you could trust, which is law enforcement, and that's the person that's coming to you, falsely, arresting you and putting you into this position by a spouse who is also your go-to person. So now you have law enforcement and your person, your partner, have both turned their backs on you, and where do you go? You have nowhere to go. Family and friends, most people don't have that open relationship where they can say, you know what, my wife just accused me of domestic violence. Guys will just say that, just laugh it off. It's just oh, she's just having a bad day, whatever. Where do you go? Guys don't talk openly about this stuff. So where do you go? There is nothing. So it's all of a sudden like coming to me and saying, I need help. Where do I go? I do feel that there's oftentimes when they first are arrested, and this is their first, I guess, taste of the fact that they're now being charged, and things have gotten to this level, they are immediately put into custody, even if it is for a 24-hour period. And it's a scare tactic, and they're all of a sudden put into there, and realizing that they're being told, like, where do you go? Like, you have nowhere else to go. This is what's happening. And when you're even being told by law enforcement officers that if you tell us that she didn't do it, or that she's the one who beat you up, or whatever happens, you're not going to get believed. So all of a sudden, when they're now sitting in jail, and their life has did a complete 360 in a matter of minutes or hours, and it takes a mental toll on you. And like, where do you go when the people that you feel are there to keep you safe and to protect you and do what's right for you, are all of a sudden, they're not there for you anymore. It leaves you very empty, and it leaves you oftentimes feeling very vulnerable. And mentally, where do you go? Like, it takes a mental toll on you. Unfortunately, a lot of the men that I do speak to about this, they felt so that there was nowhere to go. Obviously, the first thing that they think of, unfortunately, is suicide. Or like, what do I, like, I have no kids. I don't have my kids with me anymore. I have nowhere to go. I can't afford courts. I can't afford a lawyer. I can't afford to lose my job. Or, and you have no support. It feels like you have literally nowhere left to go. And that's automatically the very first thing that they think of is suicide. And unfortunately, there are some men who have thought about it multiple times. That have either attempted it, or that they have actually, just talked about it and been stopped. But to think about something that is, especially a false allegation, that gets to that point, where another human being can take it to that point, and not have repercussions, is beyond me. I do believe that they, like in the case of these men who are falsely accused and actually can prove that they have not been in vicinity where the action took place, I absolutely do believe that the person who created the false allegation should be charged, because I mean there's so many repercussions as far as not only mental health or mental state, but also losing their job, losing an income. It's a defamation of character. Where do you go? Like where do you go to start over? And if you have kids and they're being taken away, I mean that's a lot of damage that's been done, and it's been done on a false allegation, and I think that needs to be addressed. I do think that there should be somebody, just like victim services is there, when you go to the police, when you actually do come in and there's been a crime, whether it's a physically visible or not. I mean, every time that there is any crime that's been committed, victim services is there. So I do believe that anytime that there is a man who is falsely accused, there needs to be something in place just for the sanity of him, and just to let him know that, you know, what the next steps are going to be taken, what are his rights moving forward. Because just because you are accused, whether it be falsely or not, you still have a right as a human being, as a citizen in a free country. You still have rights, and so many people are just not aware of that. There are things set up in place for women, but there aren't those same rights and so those same resources set up easily and accessible for men and boys, and that's what we need to do, is have that accessible, and it needs to be known that they do have a safe space to go to, and somebody to address these issues with them immediately, so they have something to go by. One of the examples that some of the gentlemen that I've spoken to, gentleman David actually messaged me this morning, and he said that when he was about 20 years old, so this is about 25 years ago now, when he was 20 years old, he worked on the road, and he came home to his girlfriend who was high on heroin, and he came home to her, and you know, they were newly dating, and he kicked her out of the house, trying to kick her out of the house, and she wouldn't leave, so they called the police, and the police at this time said that you are not actually allowed to kick her out of the house, but if you hit her, then we will remove you from your home. And so he wouldn't hit her. So the police told her, if you tell us that he hit you, then we can remove him. And so that's what she did. She actually said, he hit me. And so they removed her and brought her into detox, and they brought him into the police station, and he now has a record, and he can't get a passport. He still has to go through all the special interviews every time he goes for job interviews or crossing the border, anything like that. He was 20 years old. He said he didn't know anything. He was new to life. He was new to adulting. He was new to all of these things, and he didn't have the knowledge or the resources to really know where it went. He said, like, basically he went to court and he said he pled guilty because that's what he was told to do, and that would just get washed away. And 25 years later, it still hasn't washed away. It's still sitting there because that's what he was told to do, because it was in the best interest of him at the time. In dealing with these the men and the issues that have come to me through the Men's Project, one gentleman, Al, actually contacted me a little while ago, and he's still in the process, about 3 years now, where he's been dealing with trying to get his kids back. He has always had, from the conversations that we've had, he's actually had a lot of character references from his friends, from his ex's friends and ex's family as well, to stating how genuine he is and how he's just a very good father and, you know, very good character reference and all this. And his ex-wife or ex-girlfriend was an alcoholic, and she actually beat him up quite a few times. But this is a big gentleman, and he always said, like, how do I go to the police and say my girlfriend attacked me and I didn't hit her back? But at some point she kept trying to get money from him every time that they, you know, because he had a job working in like up north, making a lot of money, and he was away a lot. So she drank, and they have kids together, each from separate relationships plus together. And so she felt that it was like it was just a money fountain from him, right? And eventually he changed jobs and wanted to stay closer to home, so he took a job that didn't pay as well, but he was home more. And then, so the money was not as fluid as it had been. So she, long story short, she just wasn't as happy with that. So she found a way to, I guess, hurt him for that. And so their relationship was up and down quite a bit. And so she reported false domestic violence against him, and she had some ins, I guess, with some of the or one particular police officer in the town that they live in. And so he approached one day and basically made an arrest, a false arrest for domestic violence. And he approached them and said, like, I have character references. I actually even have somebody to say this is where I was at this time. And somebody actually signed a letter stating, no, he was at work at this time when you said this allegation actually took place. It didn't matter. It was still, he just still went through courts, and he's still paying for lawyers. He's gotten numerous reports, numerous allegations, and numerous things that he's having to deal with. His kids have been taken away every time that he is dealing with the police. There's different things that are coming out, different charges that are coming at him, going through courts, and she's lying, and he's addressing that and saying, why is she not being arrested, because she's the one who's lying in court. So it's been an ongoing process, and he's gotten to the point where he has cameras outside of his home. He has cameras inside of his home, and he's actually recorded a police officer coming into his home illegally. And so it shows the manipulation. It shows that there's been so many the shock and the drama and everything that has come with this. It's been overwhelming for him. He's attempted suicide multiple times. He has no money left. He has no way of getting any jobs because he's been dragged through the courts for the last 3 years. He has to have supervised visits with his children. His ex-wife has now actually said that he's been inappropriate with his kids. So it's just like whatever straws that she can grasp at, she's done all these things, because the fact that he said I wasn't here when you told me that I abused you. So then it's using the kids, right? And so it's been ongoing, and he's actually attempted suicide. He's attempted it multiple times, and one time he actually put a rope around his neck, is what he told me. And he waited for the police to come because somebody had said that he was suicidal, and he waited an hour just to see how long the police would actually take to come, and it took him an hour to come, and he still got no attention from this whatsoever, and he's still dealing with this, and his wife, or his ex-wife, is still in the position of power by holding the kids and manipulating the system. And she's got this police officer who's in a local town. She's got a connection to him as a personal friend. So that's sort of her way of keeping her finger on the button as far as having control over this, which has made him he's lost trust. He's lost. He has no desire and no attempt to even have any relationship moving forward with another woman, because how do you do that? He's still dealing with this every single day, and he's being tied up financially, emotionally, mentally. He's completely at her feet as far as being tied down. So, and he's in courts. Like, he's in courts regularly. He's going, like, he's like the lawyers' fees, and even the lawyers are the ones saying, like, I know this, I know what she's doing, and they're still fighting, and it's just like a tunnel vision. Whatever it is that I feel like you did to me, you have to pay, and I will go through every step to make sure that you pay, because somebody has to pay. I find that there's a lot of manipulation that happens, and I find that it's almost like I came from I left a very controlling, narcissistic relationship with my ex-husband, who is also law enforcement, and I find that there's a lot of sympathy for women who have gone through controlling, whether it be financial, controlling finances, or time or who you are with, all of those things. I find that there's a lot of sympathy for women in that, but I find that the men who, the ones that I've spoken to have, it's like that come and go, because I always feel like, well, she maybe she had postpartum, maybe she's had, you know, past issues that she hasn't dealt with, and she really didn't mean this, or, you know, all of those types of things. I see it exactly the same thing in women that I do see in men, and the men end up going back to the women after, if it's women who are beating up the men, or being controlling and manipulative. I feel like the men are at that mental state where they're like, I just see the good in you. I see the good in you, so I want to do this. I want to stick together for the kids or for whatever. And then they end up getting bitten in the ass by, all of a sudden. There was one gentleman I spoke to about, he had an up and down relationship with his wife, and they had children, and it was back and forth, but they were getting to a point where it was kind of like, it was around Christmas time when they were feeling like things were sort of going to be getting on track. She was a lot more amicable, so they decided they were going to, you know, celebrate by going out to get some Christmas photos taken. He said, oh yeah, that's great, let's go to the mall and go get some photos taken. He said, you know, you and the kids are ready, so you guys go out, and I'll meet you at the mall when I'm ready. Goes and has a shower, and steps out of the shower, and there's a knock on the door, and it's a police officer coming to arrest him for domestic violence. And so that is the stuff that I hear about. That's what I hear about all the time. It's like that manipulation, that control, that feeling of like, it's a woman, and they're soft, they're feminine, they're not the kind of person who is going to manipulate. They're not the kind of person who's going to abuse. They're not going to the kind of person to do these things, because that's what society teaches us, is that men are strong and women are weak, and that they need to be they need to be given a little bit more leeway as far as if they have a bad day, or if they're you know, getting a little out of hand as far as, you know, controlling or manipulating and things like that. There's a lot more gray area where that's concerned. So the men tend to give a lot more where they should have, like, they don't see those red flags as much as they should be, and they don't give it as much attention as they should. So that's when things like this happen, is where they just get the rug pulled out from under them. And all for the fact that they are just being brought up, told and taught that women need to, like, you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a woman, and you can't be, you know, mean to them and all these other things. But then the women are the ones who are doing these, not all women, the women in these cases and the partners in these cases are the one who are doing this to the men, and there is no repercussions for that at all. And that's really sad.